Thank you for joining the Business Studies, Humanities and Social Sciences group. First of all, we are going to have Professor Catherine McBride from the Chinese University sharing her exemplary success in collaborative research fund projects. Professor McBride, please.
Okay, thank you very much for being here. And I would like to use this as an outline. I want to talk about general tips for grant writing. I'm an associate dean for research in the social sciences faculty at Chinese U, and so I've seen a lot of grants of different types, at least within that faculty. So I'll try to give some general tips and then some specific experiences and presentation tips for the CRF. I also brought my presentation for the CRF. If we have any time, I can just show you a few slides from that. I think one thing that really helped me was that one of my colleagues gave me his presentation when I knew I was preparing, and it really helped me very much. So these are my general tips, and now I'm going to go through them one by one. First, I think it's important to clearly state the hypothesis or hypotheses. This may sound strange, but I've seen people just talk about exploring data. We force our dissertation students and any thesis students to be as explicit as they can, that they have to have clear hypotheses. We want that for grants too. So we don't want to talk about exploring. If you're not sure what you're going to find, you can compare theories, but you should be really explicit about what you expect. The second thing is, whenever possible, I think it's important to link the proposal to both theory and practice. And Professor Hua was just saying that as well, that that may hold some weight. And I think in this particular panel, that should be not very difficult to do. But I've also heard proposals and presentations from people in chemistry, physics, lots of other places, you know, when they were practicing. And I think it's always nice when you talk about theory, but how could that be extended? Maybe it's a theoretical proposal, but what might it mean in 5 or 10 years, for example? So both scientific merit and societal merit can be useful to emphasize. So I always mark these. Theoretically, this study is going to do this. Practically, this research may do this. And if there's a Chinese angle, I think it's important to consider it. For example, in business, maybe there are certain aspects of the way business is conducted in Hong Kong or the mainland that might be important. In my particular proposal, it's with colleagues, it's with 11 of us all together, and we're comparing Chinese and English and reading, and so that was a very important aspect of that. It's important also to write simultaneously for both specialists and non-specialists. So you can use simple language to explain difficult concepts. This is hard to do because a lot of time we're writing for technical journals, but you have to step back and try to do that. Remember, reviewers might be from Hong Kong, they'll be from around the world. It's got to be for everybody. The abstract should be really easy to understand. That's key. When people critique you, believe them. Have people read from outside your discipline and tell you what they don't understand. And when they tell you that, accept it and incorporate it. And be very careful in the interdisciplinary realm. This particular CRF was a great learning experience for me because we really have people from chemistry, from linguistics, from education, from molecular genetics, and we tried to talk to each other, but it takes some time. It takes some patience, so that's important. Also, underscore qualifications to undertake this proposal. So we all do this all for GRFs as well. You know, make sure to cite yourself. Make sure that your short CV highlights the links to this particular area. It's got to be angled that way. And are there previous grants, pilot testing, or papers that you can particularly focus on that underscore your qualifications? And that goes for both the project coordinator, but also any other investigators, all the collaborators that you have on your team. The next one is perfect your work. Give yourself time to revise it separately from the writing process itself. So I study literacy, and there is a model by Hayes and Flower that I really like because they talk about writing in 3 stages. And to me it's a bit simplistic, but it's really useful practically. The first thing is you have a plan, you have an idea. That doesn't involve writing at all. It's just you get it eventually. The second thing is, in a second step, you write it. You write the whole thing and you try to just use it like brainstorming. You're just writing down your ideas without critiquing yourself too much, without editing. And the third step is to edit. And I think if we think about those as very distinct 3 stages, it can be helpful, because you won't have much time on the CRF. So it's important, I think, to get everything down and just don't censor. Just try. Take a few days and then go back and be very critical, but separate them as much as possible. In terms of perfecting, you should also do a lot of double checks. Establish that you've cited everyone who should be included to the extent that you can, because it's a relatively short writing. Ensure that your budgeting is well justified. The timeline is reasonable. Talk about data analyses to a certain extent, so it shows that you've thought it all the way through. You want to look prepared in every aspect. Formatting and word limits are adhered to, and plan for ethics approval early. I got this last one, learn and grow, from one of our VCs at CUHK, Professor Hypotheses. He always says, learn and grow. Remember, the more you try, the more you'll succeed, but also the more you will fail. And I think it's important for all academics at every level to remember that. It's a challenge, it's a growing experience. And there'll be a lot of critiques along the way, so accept those with thoughtfulness and resilience. So now that I've said something general, I want to talk about specific CRF tips. And I want to talk about the criteria. Well, I'll just highlight that because Professor Waugh talked about that already. Why should you go for a CRF? A PowerPoint checklist. And to me, this was one of the most challenging parts of the whole process, and just a few surprises along the way. So I just quoted this from the RGC. These are things that they talk about in terms of types of proposals, and Professor Waugh already mentioned this basically. So, and these are also, you know, these are published and they still hold. So your proposal will be judged on academic merits and scientific content, which all proposals are in certain aspects. But also, long-term goal of the proposal, does it look like it could turn into something else, something bigger? Also, opportunities for effective synergy among participating researchers. I think this is a big one. I think one of the reasons we did well is that some of us on our team had been collaborating for up to 15 years. And so we have a good record of getting things done, working together. And related to that is the last one, viability of the proposal in terms of project management. So you'll probably be asked to explain, you know, how you're going to work together, what kind of a plan you'll have. That's very important because this is a large amount of money. Are you going to be able to pull it off? There are other issues to consider as well, I think. Proposals that are a bit creative and out of the box in terms of and being cross-disciplinary may be good if they follow from what you've been doing before. I don't think this is a time to do something very new. It's a time to take the strengths of maybe 2 or 3 people or more and bring them together to do something really innovative and exciting. In our particular proposal, we have 4 institutions. We have as well Chinese U, Hong Kong U, City U, and also IED. And a lot of the proposals I sat in on, you know, like practices for PowerPoints, tended to have at least 2 to 3 institutions within Hong Kong. So you might want to think about that. I think it's very important to ask yourself, you know, sitting there, look yourselves in the eyes, and can you say, is your team among the best in the world? Now, I think that's very possible because a lot of us are studying areas that are, you know, very specific. But you have to feel that confidence that, yes, you can say, you know, we're among the best in the world, clearly, and here are all the ways we can defend that. And the other thing I would say is, because I've seen this practically in a few people, probably you should be an associate professor or above to apply. Because they're looking for a track record, I believe. They'll talk more about what the exact criteria are later. But you have to have a good track record to get into this in the first place. So, you know, just a practical tip. Why should you go for the CRF? There are a lot of advantages in things that I didn't know until I went through this process. For example, If you make it to the interview stage but you're not funded, it's possible that your university will give you some seed money anyway to develop that later. So, you know, research-wise, it's kind of a win-win. You're investing, and you may get more in the future, but this will be a great way to launch your project for at least some institutions. I think there are data to suggest that interdisciplinary research tends to yield stronger findings with more potential over time. So, you know, in terms of long-term goals, it can be a really interesting academic pursuit. And it's also good for prestige and potential for additional funding. Okay, so now I come to the PowerPoint. I really found this very challenging. The first thing is you have to practice your PowerPoint many times because they'll give you 10 minutes and not 1 second more. And the PowerPoint, here are some things that I thought were important. Can you show, and I'm saying some of the same things I said in writing. So you've written the whole proposal, now you're doing something that actually involves quite different skills. Writing a very detailed proposal is different from giving a 10-minute PowerPoint to people from many, many different areas. But can you show that it's interdisciplinary can be a strength? And that may not be for everyone. That was true for us. But anyway, you have to show that there's a good collaborative effort there. And if it's not interdisciplinary, is it comprehensive? Are you covering all areas of that particular study? Do you have a record of collaboration? Start now. Do some pilot testing. Get a small grant within your university. Be able to maybe document it with some conference presentations or better papers to show that, yes, you've worked before and you have a record. You have some record there. There has to be a detailed work plan. So I showed that in a couple of slides of, you know, what is your timing going to be and who's going to do what on your team. We panicked for a long time on my particular proposal because there are 11 of us and it's truly interdisciplinary and we are talking to each other, but we are not experts. I don't know anything about chemistry. So we were worried that because when you go to the interview stage, I don't know if it'll stay this way, but at least when I did it, there was one project coordinator and one additional person allowed to come. And we were afraid that that would not cover everything that might be asked. So we did a lot of research to try to think of what would be the most common questions, you know, just by asking our friends and colleagues, what do you think people might want to know? And we created supplementary slides. We did not present most of them, but they were there for us in case someone asked a question where we too wouldn't know the answer, but we could refer to it quickly. People may ask you also, is this a practically possible proposal? Will you really be able to carry this off in this particular amount of time? So you have to be able to be prepared to show, yes, you will. For example, for us, we're testing a lot of children. And so people wanted to know, really, do you have that capability? Luckily, my collaborator has a very good record on twin research, which is what we were doing. And so we were able to say that. What indicates that you are among the best teams in the world of this, in this particular area? Maybe you publish in high-impact journals. Maybe you're president of some society that is focused on this particular issue in some way, just anything, citations, whatever you can do. But I think there has to be something where you kind of show, you don't want to, you want to show that you're prepared. As I said, practice for timing many, many times. Think about which, if you have a larger team, maybe you have 3 or 4 people in addition to the project coordinator, who will go with you? We talked about that. Would it be better to have somebody, for example, for us, we had somebody in chemistry. We really have the 3 top people and then other people who are helping us. So we have somebody in psychology, Connie Ho at Hong Kong U, me, who's in psychology at CUHK, and then a chemistry professor, Mary Wei at CUHK. And we really debated because we thought that we might need the chemist to explain things that we couldn't explain, but ultimately we thought it might be better actually to show cross-institutional support. I don't know what the right answer is, and the panel may change on this, but give it some thought. Think about what you want to do. And practice answering difficult questions. The way to do that is to get anyone to ask you anything about this. It's really like just practicing, you know, anyone can ask anything at all in any area. It could be a technical question, it could be a practical question. Just get used to that. So practice that a little bit. Here are some surprises along the way. For me, I just did this in December. I thought there would be a few people, but there were like 30, and it was a very large, it was a room that was long, and I couldn't see everyone. There were specific questions I absolutely could not answer. I knew that would happen. So you just have to be psychologically prepared for that. I learned that the interview day actually lasts from 9 to 9. I thought it might go from 9 to 6. So I knew that I might be called on that day, but I had an airplane to catch at 9 at night, and that was a mistake. Don't do that. The amount requested is often cut. Some of ours, we requested almost 10 million. And some of what was cut was very clear in terms of the analyses. Some of what was clear was not, what was cut was not clear. So just be prepared for that. As with other grants, there's always this back and forth. And how the money is divided across universities is dicey. You have to be prepared for, I think you have to really think that through in terms of how to budget everything. So just be prepared for that as well. I guess I have about 1 more minute to just show you our actual PowerPoint. It looked like this. So we tried to explain why you might want to do this. You might want to look at reading in one language and another. We tried to establish that there are big questions in this, that Chinese and English are both important. We had a methodology. I think this kind of a slide is useful to show what we were going to do sort of in a short kind of way. We had some illustration because we're trying to do different levels, behavioral genetics and brain. And we tried to show how it was unique. We tried to talk about implications. We tried to defend who we are, that what our qualifications are. And we tried to show, I think this is a nice slide, who would do what. One more slide, the roles of team members. I think these slides are really crucial. And I think that's about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor McBride.